Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me for Heimdal Security first webinar dedicated to the SMEs. My name is Alina Marier. I'm the webinar program manager with Heimdal Security, and I'll be your host for this event. Before we get this the show on the road, allow me to share a few facts about myself. I'm passionate about everything that's related to technology, and I'm a strong believer and also a supporter that every individual and every company should have a carefree digital life, and of course enforce this rights to privacy. I've been previously employed by companies such as HP, Oracle, and Optimize, taking on different roles in IT security, information technology, and compliance. And on a more personal note, I enjoy gaming, reading, and also I'm passionate about cars and traveling and photography. So it's a real pleasure to have you all here. I hope you can see my slides and you can hear me very well. Otherwise, please feel free to state your problems in the chat in the control panel. And here's the agenda for today. So we'll have a little chat about the latest trends in cybersecurity for the SMEs. And we're going to focus on the constantly evolving threatscape and why building a solid cybersecurity posture is crucial to any business. And if you have questions during the webinar, feel free to use the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel. And we'll have a Q&A session dedicated at the end. And I'll try to answer as many questions as I can based on the available time. So this is the agenda. I'm going to have a short introduction of Heimdal Security for those that haven't heard about us. Then we're going to have an SME Market Overview. We're going to talk about cybersecurity and why it's important, the cybersecurity threats, and how to protect against those cyber threats. And of course, how we, Heimdal Security, can help your business and achieve a better cybersecurity posture. As I said, we're also going to have a Q&A session. And towards the end, I'm going to have a surprise for you guys. So bear with me until then. Now, a little bit of background about Heimdal Security. So for the persons that haven't heard about us, we're a leading European provider of cloud-based cybersecurity. And we've been recognized as a thought leader in the industry. We've won multiple international awards, both for our educational material and for our products. And the name is originating from the Northern mythology, where Heimdal is the guardian of the Bifrost, the only way in and out of the god city Asgard. And if you've seen the Thor movie by Marvel, Heimdal was the guy in the gold shining armor. It was played by the actor Idris Elba. And our story started back in 2011 at the DEF CON Capture the Flag tournament. For those of you who haven't heard about DEF CON Capture the Flag, it's really pro competition that gathers teams from all over the world, teams from the likes of the FBI or the NSA. And there we had a handful of Danish techies, if you will, that had a brilliant idea. It actually changed the world after that. And what they did is that they thought, instead of focusing on live interactions with the enemy team that were trying to hack them, they could instead try to use those tools to hack the hackers and then secure their machine. And they successfully blocked every single entry point into their the enemy server. And they did that by automatically patching any vulnerable third-party applications that were installed on that server. And then they also monitored all the DNS traffic that was used by the enemy team to gain access into their servers. So, of course, our guys won. It's a success story. And for 2 years in a row, actually. And the intelligence that we gathered back then in 2011 and 2012 was merged into what used to be called the Heimdal Core product that later on became one of our top products right now, which is Tor Foresight. And in 2014, when we launched the product, we were actually able to really map out the malicious organization and malicious infrastructure of the original CryptoLocker ransomware, and we handed that information over to the FBI, and then the FBI were able to ID the attackers, locate the malicious servers, and then the entire cyber criminal behind the CryptoLocker was taken into custody. And of course, the intelligence that we provided to the FBI was crucial in the success of the operation. And of course, the FBI later on commended Heimdal Security for our role in Operation CryptoLocker. And even today, we're working alongside Europol, the US Department of Justice. We're also endorsed by the NC3, which is the Danish Police Crime Unit, Cyber Crime Unit. And on a different note, we're honored to consider ourselves RBS Bank's group go-to cybersecurity solution for their business customers. The idea is that knowing how hackers hack, we can basically hack back the hackers. And that's a fact that gives us the ability to gather intelligence on their way of doing things and successfully put in place the right contingencies before they're able to do harm. So that's a very quick overview over our background. So now let's dive into an SME market overview. So the SMEs are often considered the backbone of economies. They're a source of economic development and employment all over the world, actually. And the World Bank estimates that the SMEs represent approximately 90% of the businesses and over 50% of the worldwide employment. And what's more, the same source, the World Bank, says that the formal SMEs secure 40% of GDP in emerging economies, and they create 7 out of 10 jobs. And the reason I wanted to mention this is so that you understand why this market segment, the SME market segment, remains one of the most attractive segments for the cyber criminals. So what is cybersecurity? Well, according to NIST, which is an authority in cybersecurity, we have the definition here on this slide. But to put it simply, cybersecurity refers to all technologies and procedures that aim to safeguard, networks, devices, programs, data from unauthorized access and attacks. And the Ponemon Institute, they conducted a study. That study showed that 70% of small companies have witnessed a cyber attack, and half of them have acknowledged that they have little knowledge about how to defend their company. And really, the results of these studies beg the question if the SME owners really understand the importance and the implications of cybersecurity. So why is cybersecurity important? Well, first of all, it's because of the data, and regardless of the size of the company, that data is of high importance. And that can be financial data, it can contain intellectual property, personally identifiable information such as customer or employee data, and other type of sensitive data. And the researchers from Kent School of Computing and the Department of Computer Science at the University of Oxford, they conducted a research and they came up with 57 different ways in which cyber attacks can have a negative impact on individuals, on businesses, and even nations. And they were classified as being physical or digital, economic, psychological, reputational, and social. And the reality is that the rate of cyber attacks and malware propagation is really not showing any signs of slowdown. And in fact, according to an AV test, they had a report and they said that the estimated growth rate predicted for 2020 is a staggering 83%. And in fact, even today, as we speak, cyber criminals and scammers are still leveraging the ongoing pandemic by spreading fake emails, putting on scam banners. They post as legitimate World Health Organization officials or government officials. And the WHO, for example, they explicitly warned that cyber criminals are sending phishing emails related to COVID-19, and they are impersonating their officials in order to gain access to data or steal money. And as always, Panic-inducing events proved to be very lucrative for the online scammers and hackers. And unfortunately, it is estimated that by 2021, the cybercrime would cost the world $6 trillion annually, which is actually doubling from 2015. That being said, we understand that the SMEs are really appealing for cyber criminals for a variety of factors, but most notably, they are easier to attack than bigger organizations, excuse me. Because they operate within the same environment as the other businesses, but usually they have less experience, they have less training, they have less tools, they have less financial resources. And according to Verizon's 2019 data breach investigation report, 43% of the breaches impacted the SMEs. And there are other studies that have shown that 27% of the companies do not have any cybersecurity protection. And 29% of the SMEs know what they need to improve in their cybersecurity. And according to the same study, even fewer organizations, they have actual written policies or plans on how they should respond in case of a data breach or a cyber attack. And 60% of the respondents of that study said that they did not improve on their protection in the aftermath of an attack. And this really sounds quite alarming, and there's reason to believe that some organizations are really not taking cybersecurity seriously. So the first step into being better prepared for an attack and protect yourselves is to know how hackers obtain access to your company's data and or your networks and IT systems. And although this is not a complete guide with all the possible threats that we know or we hear about, these are the most frequent ones, and I believe any SME should be aware of. And I'm going to start with the malware, and here's the definition for that. It's the short term for malicious software, and it refers to all the programs that end up on a endpoint on a device, be that a laptop, a desktop, mobile device, and nowadays even IoTs, smart cameras, TVs, and so on. And the purpose is to obtain and gain unauthorized access to data or produce damage to that device. And the most common type of malware are ransomware, Trojans, worms, spyware, and viruses. Out of these, I'm going to focus on ransomware now, as it proves one of the most lucrative attacks for the hackers. And the definition is, ransomware is a type of malicious software that's designed to block access to a computer system until a sum of money is paid. And here are the most common ransomware attacks in the first quarter of 2020, right when the pandemic was, booming, if you will. And we had Sodnokibi, we have Ryuk, we have Phobos, we have Mamba, and then we have Dharma. And Ryuk ransomware was used against large organizations that have more than 1,000 employees. Sodnokibi, they usually attack medium-sized enterprises with around 370 people. And Phobos, they focused on attacking businesses that had around 81 people. However, Ryuk earned the largest ransomware that were worth $1.4 million compared to 300,000 that Sodnokibi had and 15,000 for Phobos. And here's the ransomware distribution by market segment. So 29% is directed to large enterprises and 71% is directed to the SME market. And the Q1 of 2020, the average enterprise ransom payment has increased 33% from Q4 2019 to $111,000. And the attacks produced an average of 15 days of downtime for those organizations that were attacked. So it's crucial to have strong protection against ransomware. And there's another study conducted by the University of Maryland that says that hackers attack every 39 seconds with an average of 2,244 times per day. And of course, new malware types are discovered each and every day. And that also includes new phishing methods. And this brings me to the next cyber threat on my list, which is the most common type of social engineering attack, and that's phishing. And this refers to the process of gathering a user's confidential information, login credentials, credit card information, other type of sensitive data that they may have on their machines. And the attacks are usually conducted through what may seem like you're visiting a legitimate website. You're going to Amazon, or you're going to Facebook or Instagram or other type of application or websites out there. And in fact, they mimic those websites so well, and it's so easy to do. It's a fraudulent website. When you go there, you just put in your credentials, and then they have them. In March of 2020, we've seen a 600% increase in phishing emails. And as I said, most of them were related to COVID-19, 18%, but the rise in successful attack was 37%. Moving on, we have the password-based attacks. And this is all about a third party trying to gain access to your systems by, cracking your password. And we have some types of password attacks listed here. And brute force attacks, they basically consist of an attacker submitting many passwords or passphrases systematically until they find the correct combination, and then access is granted to that service or system or network. Then we have dictionary attacks, which is pretty much the same as the brute force attacks, but instead of using passphrases or keywords, they just use every word in a dictionary and attempt to hack that system. And then there are the keyloggers, and through these little programs, hackers record every keystroke on a keyboard and hope that through those keystrokes that you did in a day or in a period of time, you may have entered login credentials and passwords. So, and then once they capture that information, they can relay that information back to the hackers. And most of these attempts are done through Windows Remote Desktop Protocol, the RDP, and I think most of you have heard about that, the port 3389. That's usually used by network administrators to remotely manage Windows systems. And now with having to work remotely, most of us, and this is seems to be the trend in the future as well. The number of open ports, for example, when the pandemic really hit the world in February and March, was around 3 million. But then in April and May, when people started to work from home a lot, it spiked to 4.5 million. And if you wonder how the hackers do that, it's pretty simple. They use some sort of scanner, mass scan it's called, and I think there are other types of applications out there. And they can scan the entire internet for open ports in 6 minutes. So if you're thinking that your machine is just a needle in the haystack, I think that's exactly what they're hoping or expecting, and that's why you might be vulnerable. The APTs are the next type of threat that I would like to mention, and APT is just short for Advanced Persistent Threats. And these are attack types through which cyber criminals, they break into a network. They use several stages for kind of circumventing the detection. And then when a target's network is breached, the intruder puts the malware, and that malware searches for other vulnerabilities in that network, on that machine, and they try to exploit them or await for additional instruction from the command center. And should one of the breaches that they created on that server, on that machine, be discovered, they can still remain in that network even though one of those breaches has been remediated. So that's why it's really important to have multiple layers of protection to spot this type of breaches attempt before they get into your endpoints. And now we're going to talk about the man-in-the-middle attacks. And for this type of attacks, the hackers rely on the MITM intrusion method, and they place themselves between the users or by installing malware that is able to intercept the communication between the devices. And of course, their purpose is to, again, steal your data or your credentials or your information. And these attacks are typically successful when one or more individuals, they communicate through an unsecured public Wi-Fi network. And there they can have malware installed, or they can even spoof that Wi-Fi network so they can relay messages between the victims, impersonating them basically. And here are the 7 types of man-in-the-middle attacks. So we have IP spoofing, and this is when an attack can actually trick you that you're interacting with a website or someone you're really not, and you're kind of giving away your information. Then we have DNS spoofing, and this is a technique that forces the user to a fake website. That's usually done to gather login information. And then we have HTTPS spoofing, where the S in HTTPS stands for secure, but what this does is really tricking your browser into believing that you're on a secure connection to that website, but in fact you're not. You're going through a hacked website, if you will, and then the hacker can monitor the information through that hacked website. SSL hijacking. This is a protocol that's responsible for the encrypted links between your browser and the web server. And when this is hijacked, it's basically using another computer or server to pass on the data between your machine and that server. And of course, with the capability of intercepting your information, your browsing session. Then we have email hijacking, and this is usually targeting banks. And this way, the cyber criminals, they can monitor the communication between, the bank's customer and the bank itself. And then, at some point in time, they can place themselves in the conversation thread, and then they can instruct the customer into believing that they're still talking with the bank, and usually done for gathering banking information or getting a hold of money or PIN or passwords and credit card numbers and so on. Then we have Wi-Fi eavesdropping, and this is that technique that where the hackers, they create like an evil twin hotspot, if you will. And I'm saying evil twin because they're usually placed around, public institution or places like, I don't know, a Starbucks or a McDonald's. And when you connect through that, what seems to be a very legitimate public Wi-Fi network, you're actually connecting to the hacker's network, and then all the information that passes through that network can be accessed by the hacker. And the last method is just stealing the browser cookies. And the cookie is just that small piece of information that contains that's stored on your machine that contains information about your browsing session. And once the hackers get a hold of that, of course, they would be able to access your information about your browser, your browsing session on that specific website. And for this, I think employees should always be, educated on the risk of the open Wi-Fi networks. And another advice, if you will, is that they must always use strong passwords, and they change those passwords frequently. Moving on, we have the insider threats. And this type of attacks, they take place when the employees, they have, elevated user privileges, and intentionally or unintentionally, they perform malicious actions within the company. And this insider risk can be more difficult to spot or recognize and or avoid than the external attacks, because usually they are immune to conventional defense mechanisms, such as firewalls or intrusion prevention systems, because these are usually designed to deal with external threats. And this type of threats, the insider threats, they have increased 47% in the past 2 years. And every year, more than 30% of the businesses worldwide are affected by these insider threats. And that's why it's very important to, have company-wide cybersecurity and cyber risk assessments, and clearly and continuously enforce policies and controls around that. And the last type of threat that I want to mention is the DDoS attack, and DDoS is just short for a distributed denial of service. This is a malicious activity that's basically meant to render your business offline, whether that's a network, whether that's a website. They just flood it with traffic from multiple sources until that network is being shut down, and then your service or your business will be inaccessible. Actually, the top 3 most DDoS attack countries in 2020 so far were China, the United States, Hong Kong, and the Great Britain. They rose from the 18th place to the 10th position. Okay, and before moving to some best practices around how you can better protect against the cyber threats, I'd like to address you a question, and you can answer it in either the chat or in the questions option. And I would like to know what you personally see as being, the biggest threat in the upcoming year. So if you can answer this question, that's perfectly fine. All right, so we've seen some of the most common types of cyber threats, and how do you protect your organization against these? And these are some best practices. I'm going to start with secure physical access. And although this is more of a physical security related topic, we must also mention it as, it's as important as your digital security. And for this, you must always prevent, unauthorized access to your business, and also develop a very clear policy for reporting lost or stolen devices. And of course, cybersecurity training, it's a need that you must not neglect. And as with the other businesses, the SMEs should offer their employees continuous education in regards to cybersecurity best practices, and of course have those cyber security risk check-ins along the way. And you should also have things like safety standards and procedures that your employees should follow, having secure password, clear rules regarding the usage of the internet, and what should they access or not, processes related to how they should treat and manage your company's data, but also your customers' data. We're talking about password policies. Of course, it's crucial that their passwords always remain confidential. They don't share passwords to systems, not with the other employees, but not with the outside members as well. There are situations where users, they create accounts on third-party services by using their company email address and password, the same password that they use for their email address, let's say. And when they do that, if that third party becomes breached, chances are that the hackers would actually use that information and try to hack into their email accounts or into the company network using those credentials. And that's called credential stuffing. And it's really, really common it's a common practice that's used by the cyber criminals. And to try to avoid that, you should advise your employees to start using password managers. This way, those password managers are going to create strong passwords for them, and they will only need to remember the password for the password manager. And of course, multi-factor authentication, it's also really important. So that can dramatically reduce the number of fraudulent attempts on your machines. So you can enforce that, or should enforce that whenever you can. Now we're talking about data backups, and of course that's a best practice. All the sensitive documents, all the sensitive data, customer contracts or spreadsheets, reports, accounting information, HR information, everything that you consider of really high importance should be backed up regularly, either offline or in the cloud maybe. And of course, it is extremely important not to provide unnecessary IT privileges to your employees. And we have here the zero trust model, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't trust your employees, but just bear in mind that, malicious actions can be performed on their behalf without their even knowing about it. And the principle of least privilege is based on the concept that the employees can only be granted access to systems that, or services that they need for work, and they should never be allowed to install software on their own without having an approval first, because that software that they may install, we don't know the sources, is not verified, and can contain some type of malware that would allow hackers to get into your systems. And in fact, Gartner, they rank the privileged access management as the #1 cybersecurity priority. And when it comes to cybersecurity software, you should always maintain high standards. Make sure that you invest in a strong protection against these cyber threats that I've mentioned. And at the same time, make sure that you have a patch management policy. Always install the latest system and software updates. And these can pose, really serious risks. And since we now live in a mobile world where we're more connected than ever through mobile devices, you shouldn't neglect these either. They can pose serious risks, especially if they carry, sensitive details. If your employees might be using their phones for work, and they may have, email addresses or access to systems. So always require your staff to secure their devices through passwords, and you should also secure your company network to prevent attackers from getting into that network should you have visitors that can connect to your networks. So as we've been talking about cybersecurity software, I would like to introduce to you our products and our key differentiators in the market. And the reason for that being that whenever you have to go through decide about your cybersecurity solution, you can make more educated decision. So here's the product lineup. As you can see, it's split in 4 pillars. We have the unique threat prevention. We have our next generation antivirus for remediation. We have privilege management, and then we have email security. And where you where you really get the value from this lineup is that, first of all, we offer this unique threat prevention, where with our agent installed, you can get filtering of the incoming or the outgoing traffic into the machines, and whether that's going to be perimeter based with Foresight or endpoint based with our Foresight. So whenever a machine will talk to somebody across the internet, we'll look at those DNS requests that are coming or going from the machine, and then we can filter the incoming incoming data or attacks, or block any potential data leakages. And with Foresight, we also have our vulnerability management suite, and with that you can get insight into what's vulnerable on a machine, but also you can get a very unique full patch management solution, and that solution can patch everything, whether that's Microsoft or the third party, and it can be done automatically anytime you want, from whenever you want, and it can work with any existing AV on the market. Thor Vigilance is our antivirus, and that will offer you 100% detection rate on known infections. The key benefit here is that it can be used together with Thor Foresight, and Thor Foresight will look into unknown threats and where the AV doesn't know the signature. And once the threat is being detected by Foresight with Thor Vigilance, then you can remove or manage that threat on a specific machine. And then we have admin privilege, which is our privilege access management tool. And with admin privilege, you can easily escalate rights on the machine, very, very easy through a dashboard. we know that that's a process that's usually time and resource consuming, where you have people raising IT tickets or going to IT desks or calling them, listen, I need to install this application or that application. We basically eliminate that process. And also, this is the world's only de-escalation tool upon infection. So if an infection is being detected by one of our products, the admin rights on that machine, if they're present, are going to be de-escalated, or we block automatically the possibility of that machine being elevated with admin rights. And of course, there's a full log for all of that. In the dashboard, you would be able to see, everything that happened on a specific machine during the elevated period, and what were the processes, what were the applications that were installed, and so on. And on the email protection, our star product is the Mail Sentry fraud prevention, and this does detection on the very common scenarios of CEO fraud. Scenarios like where you get an email from somebody saying, dear employee, can you transfer this amount to this account? We need to make this payment urgently. Thank you, Mr. CEO. And that's, of course, a very stripped down version of the message. Some of these emails are very, very well built, and it's really hard to spot that there's something fishy about it. But our system will flag that to you. They'll look into specifics like account numbers. If the PDF has been altered, they can even read PDF, the account numbers from PDF. What's the wording on that specific email? While the more traditional type of spam protection emails, they're focused on volume. So where the messages are coming from, who is the sender, stuff like that. Out of these products, I'm going to focus on a couple that I think will really solve a huge chunk of potential problems. I'm going to start with Foresight. And as I said before, this product can be added to your endpoints, and it focuses on protection against ransomware, APTs, financial fraud, data leaks, and exploits. And RBS and Microsoft, they're both actively endorsing our product, with RBS even pushing it to their business customer because it's very, very strong against financial fraud. And for Foresight, we offer 3 modules. 2 of them are tied together, the Dark Layer Guard and the Vector Detection. So with these, we offer, traffic filtering to and from the machine. You're going to have a host intrusion prevention system. We're going to filter incoming attacks, and we also have our threat to process correlation technology that enables you to easily see what processes are calling for attacks from an endpoint or are trying to leak the data. And it can also block communication to command and control servers. So as soon as we know where a CNC server is located, that's going to be included in our intelligence. We're going to automatically block it on the machine. And we've seen some very, very solid cases, especially in the Middle East, showing that infections that were not detected by the antivirus were actually caught by this threat to process correlation technology that we have. On top of that, we have vector detection, and this spots infections that cannot be spotted immediately, perhaps. They track device to infrastructure communication, and in this way they deliver a host intrusion detection system, and that's done at the machine traffic layer. And to achieve that, we use machine learning and indicators of attack or compromise. And the third module is exploit resilience, which is the vulnerability management suite. And this is what really makes this package stand out. With this, you can do all the third-party and Microsoft patching. It can be done automatically. And remember that 85% of attacks start with a vulnerability. So the cool thing is that once you've done the patching, you're going to be a whole lot safer. And if you look at the dark layer guard deflector detection in a little bit more detail. What we've done is that we've built what we call a Bloom filter that's local on the machine, and that helps us have very fast access and very low latency with our detection. So we don't have to go into the cloud servers and permanently ask, whether we should let something pass or not. We only do it for verification. So if something matches the local Bloom filter, we'll go in the cloud and then ask, if that should be blocked or not. And if not, we let it go immediately for all legitimate traffic. And this also uses local caching on the machine. So it's not going to slow down that machine because it requires a lot of processing. And further, if we go into exploit resilience, there are really a lot of features. First of all, it's automatic. So when you do the patch management today, as I said, it can be, it can be a real hassle because of the process with, you can do it either through SSEM or through other time-consuming methods. But here, you do everything automatically. You just go into the dashboard, you set what time you want the patches to run, what day of the month, and once you kind of configure that, it's going to run automatically. There aren't going to be any pop-ups on the machine, no user interruptions, so it's all on the fly. All you need to do is just, set that done, and there's even no reboot required in order to apply those updates. And we cover both security and feature patches, and we know some other vendors there are out there, but they only do the security patches, so we cover all of them. And we also have the ability to delay, to have different versions, and to manage and set it anytime you want. And you can even roll back an installation of a patch or of an update if it doesn't work properly on a specific machine or a group of machines. And with this, we also have an in-app software center that's integrated within the application. So you, as an administrator, can define, what application the users are allowed to install, and then, they can just go into our agent, into the App Software Center, and then they can pick the applications that they need for work and install those applications on their own. So if they need Office or Adobe Reader, they could just pick it from that list and they install it on the machine. And we also support uninstallation of software. So if you have something on an environment that you want uninstalled, you can also do that from the dashboard. And also, something that we're very, very proud of is that we have the shortest patch to install time in the world. So it's just 4 hours, 4 hours until something goes out from the likes of Java or Adobe, until we test it and it's available for deployment. It's just going to be 4 hours. And we encrypt the transfers. We go to the cloud and we encrypt the transfer for the traffic, but also for the packages inside that traffic. So it's kind of like a double encryption. So no chance for malware to sneak into the delivery system. Also, in the patch management system, there's something else we have, and that's called the asset management system. And that is really, really nice because it's going to give you a very nice, comprehensive overview of your software inventory and what you have installed on the machines. So, for example, you have Adobe Reader. You can see how many times you have it installed, how many versions you have installed on the machines, and you can even uninstall it if you will. And everything can be done through the dashboard. Just check a box and then click uninstall. It's that simple. And of course, for the same view, in the same view, you'll be able to basically select an application. If you support patching, you'll be able to patch it to the latest version or to multiple versions that would be available. And then we have a very, very nice add-on to exploit resilience, and this is called the Infinity Management. And with this, we basically give you the ability to upload your own packages into our cloud and then use our infrastructure to deploy your applications or your own patches or updates to that application from our cloud. So if you have an internal custom software that you're using, you can upload that in, and then through our software update mechanism, you can just upload different versions of that and update your software. And if you use Heimdal as part of your of the spin up of a new machine, you can use it to just install the software that a user may need directly from our cloud. So as soon as the machine comes up, it would basically pick up all the applications that need to be installed for that specific machine, and then start installing those applications. And visually, here's how you see Foresight adding value to your system. So of course, you'll have your antivirus, which will have file and signature-based detection, a two-way firewall, application control in some circumstances, and phishing protection. But the phishing protection at antivirus level, it's usually done in the browser. Where Foresight comes and adds value to that is that it's going to work at every application that's available. So it's going to work at desktop level, not just the browser level. And then with Foresight, we're going to be able to provide traffic-based malware detection, traffic filtering, zero-hour exploit protection, data leakage and blockage, and of course the patching that I was just mentioning before. And in terms of how to some key facts about this, why Foresight is that it works with everything. It's going to fit into every environment. So you're not going to have any compatibility issues if you install Foresight. And it will also add to antivirus, to any existing antivirus or perimeter security that you may have. And we're talking about antivirus. This is our next generation antivirus, as I said. It's all about remediation, when the threat is on the machine, how do you then work with it, and how do you handle those threats on the machine. And if you look at it, standalone, it has OPSWAT certification and 100% malware detection. And it's this, the mechanisms that it has, they're all the advanced type of mechanisms you would see in modern and next-gen antiviruses. So a firewall, there's going to be a local file and a signature-based scanning. There's going to be real-time cloud scanning, sandbox and backdoor inspection, and that's done in the cloud. And we also have process behavior scanning, and that's done on the machine. But as I said, what makes it stand out is that when you combine it with Foresight, if you look at Foresight with everything that I've kind of mentioned just a little bit earlier, it can do the DNS-based detection, threat to process correlation, and vector detection with machine learning. That's going to run on top of the antivirus, and with vigilance, you can very easily quarantine or remove anything that's spotted by these. In terms of management, is the simplest to use AV on the market. It's all done in the dashboard. You have it on one screen, and then once something is spotted, as I said, it can be quarantined, it can be repaired, excluded, or deleted remotely from the dashboard by an administrator. And then we have admin privilege, and this is something that's really absolutely unique. There are very few tools in the market where you can do user rights elevation, but our solution really offers you something that stands out. So of course, you will have the ability to escalate user rights on the desktop. We know that's a big plus for the admins. I'm sure you had this headache with users that are coming your way asking for permission to install different applications. And you can either go and install it for them, or we provide the rights to them. But with this software installed, you get rid of all of that completely. And the cool thing here is that whenever a user needs something, you can have a process that's already set up, and they can elevate themselves when they need it. So you can set the elevated write session and what's the length for that, how much time they're going to have with that user elevation in the machine to install a specific application. And that's being done through configuration or group policies, which can be the same group policies that the antivirus and Foresight are going to sit under. And then, you can check the dashboard and see, in the logs, whatever they did on the machine while they had the elevated writes. And you can run it in autopilot mode, and which is something that we default, and we strongly recommend. That it's going to keep the overhead low. But if you choose to have an approval workflow, so basically a user is going to request admin rights to you, and then that request will come to you in the dashboard. And very, very soon, we're going to have a mobile application that's going to allow you to, accept or deny that workflow request from your phone. And on top of that, we also have the ability to revoke an installation. So if a user has elevated rights on their machine, and as I said, one of our products is going to detect that there's a threat, then we'll put those rights immediately away from that user, or we'll just block any request that they may make in order, or probably the malware installed in the machine can make in order to ask for elevated rights. And one thing to bear in mind is that 100% of the vulnerabilities in Microsoft browsers and 93% of the vulnerabilities in the desktop can be mitigated by just removing the admin rights for the user. And the key with admin privilege is that it's so simple to use. So once you installed it on a machine, it will immediately remove the admin rights if you wanted to. And then, one of the processes that I kicked into, that I just described, is going to kick into place. So this was a very quick overview of some of our products that, as I said, I'll help you, save some time and money, and also improve on your cybersecurity posture. And I see that there are quite a few questions here, and I really thank you for that. Somebody is asking us if we will have practical demos of the software so that I can get a better understanding of the product. And yes, we will definitely have upcoming webinars that are going to be more technical, if you will, covering more advanced type of topics. This was more like an essential type of webinar, providing information for the SMEs. But we'll definitely have that in the upcoming months. And everyone will get an invitation for that, of course. Let me see if there are other questions here. Okay, so how do you suggest a company would scale the balance between being secure and agile? In my opinion, that company should have a proactive security solution, and that solution shouldn't limit their productivity, allows them the freedom to do their business regularly or as regular, but in the same time, keep them protected. And I think I've kind of covered that when I was talking about Foresight and for admin privilege in auto mode. And another question says that a lot of companies claim to be automated and proactive, but how does Heimdal stand out from those companies? As I mentioned, exploit resilience is the only fully automated patch management that really works without the need for an admin or a user to intervene, and it can work independently from company networks. And with our predictive DNS security, we're using AI and machine learning to spot unknown servers that are used to deploy malware. So we're staying ahead of the game with this kind of technology. And given the little time that we have, I want to make sure I get to the surprise that I was mentioning at the beginning of the webinar. I think you're all curious to see what this is. And everyone that attended our webinar can get their hands on a 90 days extended free trial that's only available for the webinar participants, for the attendees of the webinar. And you're also going to get a free assessment of your organization's cybersecurity posture. So one of our consultants, they're going to get in touch with you, and they're going to propose next steps. So with that, I thank you very much for your questions and for the time that you spent here with me today. I truly hope that you find this session useful. And if you will, please take a minute to complete our post-webinar survey. That's going to really help me and my team develop better content for you in the future. And until next time, I wish you all good health and stay safe, both offline and online. Bye-bye.